Coming to you live from Nairobi, Kenya. Welcome to Africa Focus, where we bring you news from across the continent right here on Switch TV Kenya. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Talk to us via 111 and also on our social media platforms Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter, and as well on Facebook, Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. But first, here are stories making headlines. The funeral industry under pressure as coffin makers and undertakers have to face more and more COVID deaths in South Africa. Ugandan Opposition leader Bobi Wine addresses supporters after troops withdraw from his house. Tunisian mothers decry wave of arbitrary arrests after unrest. We begin our focus in Uganda, where Ugandan Opposition leader Bobi Wine addressed supporters after soldiers stood down their positions around his residence a day after a court ordered an end to the confinement of the presidential runners-up. For 11 days, heavily armed soldiers and police officers surrounding the property had prevented members of Wine's household, including his wife Barbie, from leaving their compound, as well as denying access to visitors. But security forces withdrew from around Wine's house on Tuesday, allowing the opposition leader to convene with newly elected MPs from his National Unity Platform, that is NUP, for the first time since a vote he says he was rigged.
There were tents of soldiers. They jumped over the fence and took over our compound. They could not allow my wife to access our garden. They beat up our security guards and terrorized everybody that we stay with. But, that serves only to expose the kind of regime that is presiding over us. Museveni might have used the military to assert his force and impose himself on the people of Uganda. Like I've already told you, he's an impositor who we are going to remove soon and very soon. You are special people. Amidst all the rigging, amidst all the irregularities, amidst all the violence, the people asserted their voices. Don't look at yourself like the ordinary. You are not ordinary. You are freedom fighters. You are revolutionaries. Embrace it.
Elsewhere, hundreds of Tunisian anti-government protesters demonstrated near the parliament, which was guarded by riot police, as lawmakers inside held a heated debate on a cabinet reshuffle. Moreover, security forces have carried out mass arrests during more than a week of night riots and daytime protests against police repression, poverty, inequality, and corruption. Still in that particular country, mothers in the Tunisian capital are accusing authorities of arbitrarily arresting their children in response to several nights of unrest, with the rights group saying at least 1,000 people have been detained.
Mothers in the Tunisian capital are accusing authorities of arbitrarily arresting their children in response to several nights of unrest, with right groups saying at least 1,000 people have been detained.
The little children ran like this to the dead end. Here there is a dead end. My son was here on the stairs connecting to the internet. The door was ajar like that.
39-year-old mother said her son did not take part in the violence that gripped regions across Tunisia, including her working-class district of Cervical in Tunis.
Why did the law enforcement push open the door and take my boy like that from inside? They would have had the right to take him if he had been outside, but from inside. Is this a land of justice? Sorry, but this is a country of injustice. Injustice I saw with my own eyes.
Hassan Sefidine, 18-year-old, was in the stairwell when the police bagged in and grabbed him, said Ben Salem, who works as a seamstress in a factory for $185 a month. Sefidine, a second-year student at a technical school with no crime record, has been accused of taking part in acts of violence and is expected to stand trial on January 29th. On Wednesday, Ben Salam and other mothers rallied outside a Tunis courthouse to denounce arrests. Some said their children were taken into custody for having violated a nighttime curfew imposed to stem the spread of coronavirus. The protest erupted on January 14th before easing on Wednesday night as the COVID-19 pandemic rattles an already embattled economy, 10 years after uprising the toppled dictator Zine Abdine Ben Ali. At least 1,000 people, including many minors, have been arrested according to human rights and other non-governmental groups. Omuyema Mehdi from the NGO Lawyers Without Borders said most of the cases against those detained contained serious procedural flaws. Regarding the arrest, there is a fairly large number. We do not have exact figures from the Ministry of the Interior. What we have as figures here now, according to the information we have and what has been communicated to us, is that around 1,000 people have been arrested. 1,000 people who are scattered around the country, of which 30% are minors, children.
Dont 30% sont des mineurs, des enfants.
Activists have been rounded up for voicing support for the protest on Facebook and other social media platforms, and at least one of them now faces 6 years in jail if convicted. They warned that such arrest would fuel anger on the streets against security forces and turn the people against authorities. Moreover, authorities said Monday they had made 600 arrests, then reported another 70 over the following 2 days.
Selon les informations que nous avons pu collecter des avocats qui travaillent dans ces tribunaux, parce que
according to the information we have been able to collect from lawyers who work in these courts, fortunately there is a huge mobilization of lawyers who are being put in place to defend these people, but they are extremely outnumbered because no one listens to them. Well, according to the lawyers who are in court in Ben Arus yesterday,
en 4 heures ou en une demi-journée, ce qui
the Ben Arus prosecutor would have handled 110 cases in 4 hours or in half a day. This absolutely does not guarantee the respect of the criminal procedure and the guarantee of the rights of these people. This is what one could say about expeditious trials.
La loi qui garantit les droits des personnes gardées à vue, elle est totalement bafouée dans le cadre de ces arrestations-là.
The protests come with the economy in freefall, youth unemployment soaring, and anger mounting against the political leadership. Much of the unrest hit working-class neighborhoods, where a decade after the revolution, youths still clamor for jobs and dignity, key demands of the uprising.
Une stratégie qui est mise en place qui a l'objectif de dissuader les manifestants et les jeunes.
It seems from the information we are collecting that Law 5, the law which guarantees the rights of people in police custody, is completely flouted in this context of these arrests.
Ce que je peux vous dire, c'est que de fixer une peine généralisée pour un groupe est un non-sens en droit.
There is a strategy in place which aims to dissuade protesters and young people from going out again in the streets. These very strong sentences which seem to have been handed down from 2 years etc. But obviously we cannot decide without having the file. But what I can tell you is that fixing a general sentence for a group has no meaning in law.
Those arrested and detained as adults are being deprived of lawyers, medical assistance, and barred from contacting their parents. Some lawyers have said more than 100 people have already been sentenced in a hearing that lasted just 4 hours.
Our focus now on matters health. South Africa is the continent's most affected country by the coronavirus pandemic, with 1.3 million confirmed cases and just over 40,000 deaths. A toll that is putting the funeral industry under pressure as coffin makers and undertakers have to face more and more COVID deaths.
But the biggest impact that we are faced with at the moment is the shortage in terms of raw material. It does disrupt production, it does hamper us, it does put us on the back foot. Found out was that with COVID, the bigger you are, the easier it is to pass on because, of shortage of bread and any underlying conditions in terms of sugar or pressure levels. So yes, we do have a bigger demand on the oversized boxes as compared to your normal boxes.
So far we have distributed 22 of these containers across the country to various areas where we think we might have to bolster our mortuary facilities.
COVID has put pressure in the whole country. COVID has put pressure on the funeral industry. We're not immune from that. We've got just well over 190 bodies here. Out of that 190 bodies, I'll safely say 100 of those, it's actually COVID.
Seychelles this month became the first nation to welcome vaccinated visitors from all over the world, but those working in the tourist industry believe it will be a while until mass tourism is back.
The Indian Ocean archipelago of the Seychelles began vaccinating its population against the coronavirus on Sunday, the first African nation to do so. This month, it became the first nation to welcome vaccinated visitors from all over the world. This move comes in a bid to revive tourism in the country. The country's President Wavel Ramkalawan was the first to receive the jab, an event broadcast on live television at a hospital in the capital, Victoria. Several dozen other public figures joined him.
The government have no choice but to open the borders. We depend on tourism. It's our main industry. If we don't, we will go down. We won't succeed. We need to open it, and we need to do it in a way that we can control the situation.
The country is using the Chinese vaccine developed by the Chinese pharma giant Sinopharm with its subsidiary, the China National Biotech Group.
But I think it's a good move as long as it's very controlled. It has to be controlled for the time being until the time comes for us to fully open. Although the government has announced they know that the amount of tourists won't be that big coming in. But we're just preparing ourselves to be ready when it happens. When the mass tourism starts flowing in, we are ready for them.
According to the Health Minister, Peggy Vidot, the country had received a donation of 50,000 doses of the vaccine from the United Arab Emirates. Health workers will start being vaccinated and then people aged over 65, followed by the distribution to the rest of the population.
Keeping the place cleaning, sanitizing ourselves, and also we have to let the clients know, even if a change, they've got injection, we still remind them of the new situation, the new way of thinking now. So I think we are ready, and I think the government and the industry is on the right track for this to come. Right now, I think it's not picking up at all, but the thing that they have announced is that it's coming soon. We will see in the next few months that's coming, we will see us into a situation which is, and the problem is that we are in vaccinating our population, which is fantastic. Right now, I think we are the second country in the world with the highest vaccination.
Seychelles hope to vaccinate 70% of its population within 2 to 3 months at a rate of 1,000 per day. The archipelago of 115 mostly uninhabited islands and islets has a population of 98,000 and initially appeared to have staved off the pandemic, initiating a swift lockdown in April last year, which was lifted a month later with only 11 cases recorded. However, cases have jumped since December, with a total of 508 now recorded, one of which was fatal. The number of daily cases is rising, with 57 recorded on Saturday. Ramkalawan said the country was also expecting delivery at the end of January of another 50,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, a donation from the Indian government. Nyakundi Kelvin, Switch TV.
Stay with us here on Africa Focus. Still to come. We bring you a special feature of the burden of cervical cancer. Welcome back to Africa Focus. My name is Joel Church and our sign language interpreter is Tracy Dorcas. Be sure to reach us via 111 and moving on. A tropical cyclone Eloise has resulted in heavy rains and flooding in parts of South Africa's Greater Kruger National Park. The cyclone is passing over South Africa after it hit central Mozambique last week, where it caused severe flooding in port city of Beira and displaced thousands of people. Almost 7,000 people have been displaced and over 5,000 houses destroyed or damaged in the area, according to the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The National Emergency Response Teams also confirmed 6 fatalities and 12 serious injuries, with numbers expected to rise as the scale of the damages, or rather of the damage, is fully assessed in coming days. Cervical cancer is highly preventable, but poor access to prevention, screening and treatment contributes to 90% of the deaths. From Kariobangi North in Nairobi, Kenya, our reporter Harry Chimea brings us the story of Pamela, whose life has been vastly affected since her diagnosis. Although she shares her story bravely in an aim to create awareness on cervical cancer.
Pamela Mbaisi is among the many women in the country who aren't fortunate to combat human papillomavirus, also known as HPV, in their early years.
2015 nikawa natokwa na damu kidogo kidogo. Nikaona pengine ni age inafika sasa ile ya menopause. 2016 pia ikawa inatoka tu from January to December. Nikienda hospitali naambiwa hatuwezi kukuangalia kama damu inatoka. Hata mamangu mzazi nilipompigia akaniambia hiyo ni kawaida tu kwa wamama, itakuja isha. So 2017 nikaenda hospitali nyingine, daktari aliponiangalia akaniambia, Pamela, we are very sorry, uko na suspicious cancer.
4 years ago, news that she had cervical cancer stage 3 shattered her world, and she understands the stigma and pain that comes with battling cervical cancer.
Niliona kama mimi si mtu, nikaona tu maisha yangu imeisha. Kwa sababu mzee tayari alikuwa ashanitoroka wakati nilikuwa nikitokwa na damu. Nikawa niko na watoto kwa nyumba, siwezi fanya kazi. Damu inanitoka na kansa ni kitu mbaya. Kwa sababu hiyo damu inapotoka unanuka, huwezi kukaa kwa watu. Unakaa peke yako, unaona uko dunia nyingine. So baada hiyo report, mimi nilikuja mwenyewe kwa nyumba, nikaona sina maisha. Nikaenda kwa chemist nikanunua rat. Kachukua nguo zangu nikazimwagilia mafuta. So nilikuwa tu nataka nijiue.
Though she first learned of a condition in early 2017, she sought treatment in 2020 due to financial constraints. Although months of painful therapy have helped stop the bleeding and pain, the mother of 3 says she opts to have her uterus removed. But due to her financial constraints, she's not able to afford the medication, let alone the surgery.
Kama sasa kuna makaratasi ambayo nilipewa, nikirudi niwe nimefanya hiyo blood works nitoe. Nikimaliza ni book sasa ndio nione daktari. Siwezi enda kama sina hiyo pesa. Kama kuna mtu anaweza jitokezea anisaidie niweze kumaliza hii matibabu imebaki, nitashukuru sana.
Pamela has now taken on a fresh battle, helping and encouraging patients to cope better with the disease. Cervical cancer occurs in the cells of the cervix or lower part of the uterus connecting to the vagina, and it is estimated to cause 3,286 deaths each year in Kenya.
Cervical cancer is caused by human papillomavirus, especially the type 16 and 18. There are other strains of human papillomavirus that cause warts and also can cause the cervical cancer, but about 70% is caused by strain 16 and 18. Because one of the risk factors is early sexual debut, having multiple sexual partners or having a partner that has multiple sexual partners. And also when you have other infections, other sexually transmitted infections ongoing, that increases your risk of getting the infection and eventually it transforming to cervical cancer.
Dr. Rita Rogo says the treatment options depends on the stage, but if detected early, it is curable.
The treatment options will depend with the staging. We first of all have preventive measures. So for children, for girls under the age of 10, we provide vaccines. There are different types of vaccine, Gardasil, Cervical, you can get the vaccination for it. If you're between the age of 25 to 49, we still do screening, or even beyond that age, beyond the reproductive age, we still do screening. That's to prevent it. In terms of managing it, once we've made a diagnosis of cervical cancer, we do what we call staging. So depending on the stage, that will determine the kind of treatment we'll give you. We can do what we call ablation, which is like burning the area with heat. We can do what we call cryotherapy, or we can even do surgical intervention. Yes, we can. If the cervical cancer is advanced, we do what we can do surgical plus chemo or radiotherapy. So that is chemo and radiotherapy. Or we can also do palliative care. It's very advanced. Yeah.
With January being Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, women and girls worldwide are being encouraged to go for pap smear screening regularly and get vaccinated so as to eradicate this disease.
Away from that, the Arab League has welcomed the consensus reached by the two delegations representing the Libyan House of Representatives and Libya's High Council of State during a meeting hosted by Morocco in Bosnica. The meeting was aimed at unifying Libyan institutions and top state posts in accordance with the framework regulated by the Libyan political agreement signed in Skhirat.
Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow at the latest, we will have completed discussions on the subject of those posts within the framework of those mechanisms and criteria we have reached for determining the names, and after that the matter will be presented to the two councils for decision.
The meeting was excellent. There is an agreement among all on the need to change the cabinet positions in the short term. Tomorrow, if God willing, we will achieve our goal of agreeing on all the criteria, mechanisms and time to present applications and acceptance of applications to be validated by the 13 Commission and refer everything to those two commissions. The Government of the National Unity, or rather the GNA, and the Tobruk-based House of Representatives.
Still on that particular matter, representatives from rival Libyan camps say a candidacy process will open for key institutional appointments after a new round of talks in Morocco on ending nearly a decade of conflict. The process, set to run until February 2nd, aims to quickly fill several strategic posts in order to facilitate collaboration with an interim executive body set to be elected next week in Geneva.
Morocco has lent its support to Ms. Stephanie Williams, former UN Special Envoy to Libya. Morocco today welcomes the appointment of Han Kubis as Special Envoy to Libya and believes that he possesses both personal and professional credentials that qualify him so that he can play a positive role in the Libyan file. Morocco supports the UN, but it considers the UN as a facilitator and not an owner of the Libyan dialogue, which belongs to the Libyans. Who are the decision makers in this dialogue? The UN creates the context and facilitates the operations.
On to other news, residents of Lubumbashi, which is the economic capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, report that they are struggling with the rise in crime since a curfew was decreed last month to stem the spread of the coronavirus, with women bearing the brunt of the violence.
They came the day before yesterday. They operated there 4 or 5 houses. Give the telephones, give this. Do this. We call the police, but the police gets lost looking for where.
They asked me to give the child to my husband. I gave the child to my husband, thinking that they were now going to leave. Suddenly they told me to take off my clothes. I took off my clothes as I was afraid. As I was taking off my clothes, one of the policemen gave his weapon to the other. He began to engage in sexual intercourse.
Il a commencé à passer à l'acte sexuel.
We have indeed noticed that it is during this period of curfew that there are acts of delinquency, appropriation and violence that we live in the city.
It is not understandable that a soldier with weapons and ammunition should open fire in the town center, firing about 50 bullets without restriction. It is not normal. This story must be a challenge to the Interior Minister and the Governor so that they do their job.
Il y a toujours des brebis galeuses, ça nous ne pouvons pas.
There are always some black sheep. We can't deny that. But every time we notice cases directly linked to our security forces, we don't hesitate to question them, to give out more severe sanctions.
À interpeller, à donner des sanctions plus sévères.
Well, that's all on Africa Focus today, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms as Switch TV Kenya, Joel Chacha M on Twitter and as well on Facebook. Switch TV Kenya and Joel Chacha. Our producers have been Harry Chimea and Nyakundi Kevin. My director Simon Nyaga, and my name is Joel Chacha, and our sign language interpreter has been Tracy Dorcas. Until next time, do have a safer good day.